If the Atlanta Braves decide to go with Danny Lehmann as their new manager, would that be too radical of a shift in the organization? Is that what the organization needs? I'll answer those questions and many more on today's mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, and leave us a comment down below. And if you're listening on the audio side, you can help out as well. Just leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks as always for making Locked On Braves your very first listen of each and every day. And thanks to all our everydayers out there who continue to ride through us here as we get ready for the offseason. The baseball season will end this weekend, and the offseason will officially get underway. And I expect a lot of news to come out pretty quickly for the Atlanta Braves. So make sure you're subscribed here to Locked On Braves. We'll be covering all of that. Today is our weekly mailbag episode, though. We got about 20 questions or so to get to. As always, it's a wide variety of questions. We do have some about the potential of Danny Lehmann, which we'll get into. We'll talk about, potential fallback options at shortstop, outfield, all of those questions on today's mailbag episode of Locked On Braves, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. All right, well, thanks so much for those who joined me here. Lone Wolf, Mr. E, Hell Hogs, appreciate you all being here live with me. Let's jump right into the questions, though, as we have a lot to get to. First one's a fun one from an everydayer, Docs Cards, who says, start one, bench one, DFA one, Olsen, Harper, or Freeman. And it's a tough question. It's a fun question. I think it's also unfair to Matt Olson because I think Freddie Freeman and Bryce Harper are Hall of Famers. So I immediately have to DFA Matt Olson, but doesn't mean he's a bad player. Doesn't mean I don't love Matt Olson. Doesn't mean that he might not one day be a Hall of Famer. But Freddie Freeman and Bryce Harper are pretty clearly Hall of Famers. So I can't choose Matt Olson right now over either of them. And then as far as who I would start, bias, but I'm probably going to start Freeman, bench Harper, and DFA Matt Olson. But that might just be the biased part of me, and Freddie Freeman being a Brave. I think you can make the case that Harper in his prime. It's also Harper in his prime was probably an outfielder too, so different positions. But obviously Harper, the transition to first base, he's been a Gold Glove caliber player there too. So I think it's a toss up between Harper and Freeman. I think you probably take Harper's best years over Freeman's best years, but they're both Hall of Famers in my mind, and Olson's not. But I am an Olsen truther. I am an Olsen supporter. Several questions here from Joey Milby, who says, should we strike out on shortstops? Where would you pivot to improve the lineup? At that point, I'd be all in on a Ketel Marte trade, but just wondering your thoughts on how we can improve the lineup if we whiff on a shortstop. So there's another question kind of similar to this later in the podcast as well. If you can't upgrade shortstop, let's say you don't get Ha-Seong Kim, you can't get Bo Bichette, and you have to run it back next year with Nick Allen. And I'd say even if that is the case, you still go out and get an IKF. You still go out and get a Willie Castro. You still get something to kind of help support Allen as a fallback option. But let's just – and look, even if it's Ha-Seong Kim, I've said this multiple times, that to me is not the big bat that you need to add. So even if it is Ha-Seong Kim, I do believe there's more that you need to do. But let's just say for the sake of argument for this exercise here in Joey's question, you don't make an upgrade at shortstop. You're basically running it back with Nick Allen, whoever. Where do you improve? In my opinion, and again, I think this is in addition, I think you go to the outfield. I think you go to Cody Bellinger. I think he's becoming, and I'm going to give my ideal offseason next week. I think Cody Bellinger just makes a ton of sense for what this team needs. But I think it's ultimately the outfield. I think you get somebody that can DH, but also play in the outfield, but as a big bat. Outside of that, you take a shot at Pete Alonso. It'd be weird putting him in a Braves uniform, but you do have the DH spot open. Would you dare do that? And that's how you get a big bat. I think whatever you need to do, and again, to me, this is in addition to also getting a shortstop, unless you spend big on a Bo Bichette, which I don't think they're going to do. But even if it's Ha-Seong Kim or less, again, Ha-Seong Kim is not that big bat. It's just an improvement over what you had at shortstop. But I still think even if you get him, you need to go out and find a good bat for the lineup. And I think we're at whatever that looks like, whatever the position may be, I think you certainly need to go out and acquire that. A couple more here from Joey Milby, who says, assuming they are healthy and if it's up to you, what is Lopez and Holmes' role on this team next year? How does their health issues affect the offseason if you are in charge? I think it's pretty huge. And I'm a little surprised we haven't gotten much of an update on Grant Holmes yet to know kind of his status. I would imagine you would want to know that before the offseason really gets underway, because that is going to dictate a lot. Because if Grant Holmes throws again, the issue's still there, and he's going to have surgery and miss all of next season, then you're immediately down a big arm. And that plays a lot into your offseason plans. It probably plays a little bit into Ronaldo Lopez's plans, because if both of those guys are healthy, I view Holmes as more of the starter and Lopez as a guy that maybe he's kind of in a transition. He starts some games for you, but you could also use him in the bullpen. I mean, it'd be hard not to put a guy back in the rotation who had a 1.99 ERA the last time he was healthy. So I think you at least have to give him a chance in the rotation, but I think he's the better fallback option for the bullpen. So if both guys are healthy and in the roles where I think they maybe fit the best, I think Holmes is in the rotation as a mid-rotation type of guy, and Lopez is in the bullpen as a setup, maybe even closer, which is very, very valuable. But I think both guys will at least get the opportunity to start if they are healthy, and then you just kind of go from there. But their health is very much dependent on how AA approaches the offseason. Next one from Joey. Bigger role on the team in 26 out of Lara, Fuentes, and Richie. Does Lara get the chance to be a dominant reliever? Can Fuentes or Richie get the chance to grab a rotation spot and not let go? What happens if 26 is the opposite of 25 and everyone stays healthy? To answer the last question first, if everybody stays healthy, I don't think these guys have any impact in 2026. Maybe Lara in the bullpen, but if everybody stays healthy, I don't think any of these guys have much of an impact. Look, Fuentes got rushed last year because of the injuries. We all know that. Wasn't ready. It's clear it wasn't ready. We didn't need all the jokes from Bowman to tell us he wasn't ready. We all could see that. I don't know. And even if they're not completely healthy this year, I still question the impact that these three guys might have. I'd probably say Lara or Richie. I think Richie I think Fuentes has maybe better pure stuff, but I think Richie is probably more prepared for the jump to the big leagues and has the ability to be there and be sustainable. I think Lara has the ability to come in and be an impact reliever right away. But if I had to guess, I'd say probably none of them have a major impact or big role on the team in 2026, but especially not if everybody stays healthy. And then last one from Joey, who says, of the three guys said to be finalists for our manager's job, who had the best relationship with Chipper? Is there any doubt Mr. Jones will be coaching Atlanta in some capacity next year? Is it a deal breaker if the new guy says he doesn't want Chipper on the staff for whatever reason? I don't think it would be a deal breaker, but I do think that Chipper's going to be the hitting coach. Again, if I had to put some odds on that right now, our friends at FanDuel, I don't know how odds work, but I give it good odds. I can do percentage chances. I'd probably say it's a 60% chance that Chipper Jones is going to be your hitting coach next year. I don't think the managerial hire is dependent on, hey, if you come, Chipper's got to be the coach. I don't think they would do that, but I also think they'd be pretty dumb not to. So yeah, I think that answers your question there, Joey, but thanks for all the questions. Next one from Caleb Cook, who says, who is one free agent no one is talking about coming to the Braves that you think we should keep an eye on? Not really a question I've thought about, and apologize I didn't read this one ahead, so I don't really have anybody in mind. And look, that's the problem when you trying to predict what Alex Anthopoulos is going to do, is that he never does what we expect. And so it's always, or not always, but almost always the unexpected, right? It's the trade for Sean Murphy that nobody saw coming. It's the trade for Chris Sale that nobody saw coming. It's the signing of Ronaldo Lopez that nobody saw coming. It's always a move that we don't see. So there's no point in me even trying to look, because wherever I look, that's just not going to be it. And that's sometimes the crazy things of doing this podcast and trying to predict and talk about what the Braves will do. It's foolhardy sometimes, because AA is just going to, if you talk about it, AA is not going to do it. So I think that's one. I mean, again, we've talked about pretty much everybody, so it's hard not to really even name somebody that we haven't discussed at this point. There's probably just because I was looking at this name earlier as I was going through a list, Alex Bregman, I don't know how you'd make it work, but if you wanted to find a big bat, you wanted to find a postseason leader, could you go after an Alex Bregman and then move he and Riley throughout the DH spot or something like that and make it work? If you just want to get a good bat, and like I said, that's the plan. You don't get your shortstop you want to just go get a good bat. Do you go get Alex Bregman? Again, I don't think that's likely, but that's not anything people are really talking about. So there's one for you, Caleb. Matt Olson Burner says, does it worry you that as better bats have left the team or aged out, Dansby, Wild Bill, Ozuna, Soler, AA has gone backwards in replacing them, Murphy, Arcia, Allen? I think the biggest one there is Dansby in the shortstop position. We talked about this at the beginning of the offseason. I'm not going to go through all that again because some people didn't like reliving that, but that was the biggest thing for me. Okay, you let Dansby go. I get it. He got overpaid, but you didn't really do anything to replace him. Trading Contreras, you felt like at least in Murphy, and this was at least their mindset, whether you agree with it or not, that you were at least getting something comparable, but certainly not a step backwards. Ozuna, I think he would have been gone. Obviously, he broke out in 23 and 24 and was fantastic. I don't think they've really had the chance to replace him yet. This was the offseason they replaced Ozuna, so we haven't seen that yet. Soler, they tried to piece things together with bringing Rosario back and all of that. But Soler was replaced with Ronald because Soler came because Ronald was injured. And so you could say that was a better replacement. The only one in there that really kind of pains me is the shortstop position. You let Dansby walk, okay, but you never really did anything to replace that. And so that's the only one that really bothers me. All right, we got a lot more questions to get to on today's episode. We'll be right back answering more of your questions. The NFL season is here and the NBA season, and PrizePicks is here as well. The daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, like I said, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It is that simple. Just open up the PrizePicks app. You'll see for the World Series game on Friday night, they'll have Shohei Ohtani out there for home runs. We'll have a number. You just pick more or less on that. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hits more or less on whatever number they have out there. Strikeouts for Yamamoto. All you do is pick more or less. It's that simple. You can do it for the NBA, points scored, NFL, touchdowns, all of that right there in the PrizePicks app. Also, if you have issues controlling the way that you game, please visit prizepicks.com/help-center/responsible-gaming for tips on how to practice responsible gaming. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Thank you as always. Making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. They'll be getting caught up on all the World Series action. The guys from MLB Game Night could be their last one of the year on Friday at night. Make sure you go give them a listen and tell them how much you appreciate the work they've done throughout the entire year. We'll be back next week. Like I said, World Series over. You got that 5-day period for option windows. We're talking a lot about those options. I'll give you my ideal off-season. All that coming your way next week. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves. Jumping back into the questions here, Jake Mastroianni, Burner, who always has the best questions, says, is there any world where we cough up the money or prospects required to get Skeens or Skubal? Also, who do you think sticks around if we get the Dodgers bench coach on this current staff? I think they'll try to keep around Eddie Perez. I think that's one guy that no matter what happens, I think they'll try to keep around Eddie Perez. Outside of that, and I think, Cranny as well. I'd be shocked if you get rid of one of the best pitching coaches in the game, but again, depends on who they hire. They might have their own guys in mind. We just don't know. But I think, Perez, Cranny, you would definitely want to keep those guys around. As far as your first question, no, I don't think there's any world in which the Braves have the prospects to cough up or cough up the prospects it would cost to get Skeens or Skubal. Skeens, why would the Pirates even consider trading him? Skubal obviously is getting closer to free agency. They're not going to be able to work out a deal to pay the, what's about to be a back-to-back Cy Young winner. So they're going to try to, get a lot of value on that. But I don't think the Braves are going to pay that price. And I don't even know if they could afford that price and what it would take to get a back-to-back Cy Young winner. Brandon Edwards says, if Danny Lehmann does become Braves' next manager, which LA coaches could follow him to Atlanta? Woodward, Pryor, Ebel, and would there be any holdovers to stay with the Braves? Hires, Perez, Cranny, Freddie G. Already answered the second one of those. I think Cranny and Perez, they would like to keep around. As far as the first question, which LA coaches, be honest, I don't know a ton about those guys. Obviously, if you can keep Cranny, I don't think you would bring over Pryor. Woodward is one that would be nice as a first base coach and somebody with some managerial experience. So it'd be great if you could bring him along. But outside of that, I don't really know too much about the LA coaches over there. Matthew Riley, how angry will you be if the Braves don't go over the luxury tax this year after resetting last year? I'll be very, very angry. And this was my whole spiel last offseason when I said multiple times, okay, you want to reset the tax, that's fine. But next offseason, you better go bananas. So I'll go bananas if they don't spend a ton this offseason. I'll just say this, whether or not they spend a ton is one thing. But if you don't address all the holes that you have, you don't address the shortstop position, at least the best way that you can. If you don't address the bullpen issues that you didn't address last offseason, you don't get more depth for the rotation, and you don't find that big bat, I'll be upset. Now, whatever that cost, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, you may trade and get some players that don't cost a lot, but they still fill those needs, and that's fine. For me, it's not so much about spending the money as it is addressing the needs. Last year, they just didn't address the needs, and maybe that was because they didn't want to spend the money. But for me, I'll be pretty upset as I can be over baseball. I'll be pretty upset if they don't at least address those four needs that I mentioned: shortstop, bullpen, starting pitcher, and a big bat. They don't address those four things, I'm going to be pretty upset going into next season. E. Fuentes says, if we can't sign Ha-Seong Kim or get an offensive star like Seager or Bo, should the Braves pivot to try to get another star outfielder instead of another average shortstop, leaving Allen and his Gold Glove defense in the 9 spot, but avoiding having a second hole if Michael Harris can't give us anything offensively? So this is a question I was alluding to earlier. Appreciate for your question here, Fuentes, who I know is an everydayer. But if you can upgrade at shortstop, yeah, I think you absolutely go out and you try to find a big bat wherever that is. I think that is most likely going to be the outfield just because there's more options in the outfield. I'm not saying it's going to be a Kyle Tucker, but could it be a Cody Bellinger? Do you try to convince Byron Buxton to accept a trade with that Twins organization seeming like they're going down a pit very quickly? Could you convince him to leave Minnesota? I absolutely think no matter what happens at the shortstop position, even if they do bring back Ha-Seong Kim, like I said, unless, like you said, Fuentes, if they were to get Seager or Bo, okay, that not only fills the shortstop position, but it also gives you the big bat. But if it's not those guys, and even if it is Ha-Seong Kim, I still think you need to go out and find that big bat to lengthen the lineup. So, yes, absolutely agree there. Calvin Fenner says, if they ate a lot of money, how do you feel about Javi Baez at shortstop? I don't feel, because I don't want that. I think Javi Baez is the opposite of the approach that I'm hoping the Atlanta Braves offense goes, and get away from the boom or bust mentality and approach, just wildly aggressive swinging and getting more into what we've seen with the Blue Jays in this postseason, which has been very, very impressive, and doing a little bit all. Yes, you got to have that power. You cannot win without power, but you got to be a little bit more well-rounded. And Javi Baez is not a well-rounded hitter. So I don't care how much money they eat. I shouldn't say that. I mean, if you got him pretty much for free, why not? He's a good defender. But I'm not really all that interested in Javi Baez. Another one from Matt Olsen-Burner, who says, what's your level of worry with a first-time manager leading a veteran roster that should be contending? Do you think Raylo throwing more innings at a lower velo or less innings at a higher velo is more likely to cause re-injury? Good question on that second one, because I've kind of been on the bandwagon of put him back in the bullpen and just let him throw fewer innings, but at higher velocity. But from what we kind of see in the trend for pitcher injuries, a lot of it seems to be related to the higher velocity. So I don't know. That's a tough one to really answer there, that if you throw it, and look, throwing at his lower velocity is still 94, 95, right? I mean, that's still pretty hard. But it's not like he's max effort at 97, 98 all the time, like he would be as a reliever. I think pitchers are just going to get injured eventually, but yeah, it does bring up a good point of, okay, can you delay that a little bit by maybe not throwing max effort all the time, which I think most pitchers do, and especially pitchers in a relief role, or if you can pitch max effort on shorter spurts, is that better for your arm? I think that's a good question to contemplate, but I don't have a good answer for you. As far as the first one, my worry about hiring a first-time manager, that is a worry for me. And that was one of the things, that was my first priority. When we began the offseason, I thought about my priorities for a manager. My first thing was somebody with experience. And I kind of gave in on that a little bit with George Lombard, but he did at least manage at the minor league level. As far as I know for Danny Lehmann, he has no managerial experience. Been a bench coach for years, and that's good, and that's great experience, but he has no managerial experience. And that does worry me, especially as a younger guy, like you said, leading a group of veterans that have been there, done that. They've won a World Series. They've been in the postseason. They've gone through all of this. Yeah, that definitely does concern me, but that seems to be the trend that a lot of teams are going to these days. All right, I got several more questions to get to on today's episode. Some more on Lehmann, some fallback options at shortstop. We'll get into all that here next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss out on the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. You can check out FanDuel.com right now, where the Dodgers are the favorite to win the game on Friday night with Yamamoto on the mound, but the Blue Jays are the favorite to win the World Series. So are we getting a game 7? And right now they have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as the favorite to win the World Series MVP, followed by Ohtani. If the Dodgers win, you know it's going to be Ohtani. But you can check out the NBA odds as well. The Hawks are playing the Pacers tonight, and even without Trae Young, they're favored to win. I believe that's some sort of cup game, whatever they call it. But you can check out all of those odds there. They have the NBA Cup winner odds. The Thunder are the favorite there, with the Hawks at plus 2,500. Again, see all that at FanDuel.com. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/play-safe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Wrapping up the questions on this mailbag episode. Next one comes from Trey Robinson, who says, if the Braves fail to make the postseason in 26, do you think AA is on the hot seat? Yes, I absolutely do. I mean, I know he's under contract for quite a while, but those contracts are pretty much meaningless. But I think this is a huge offseason for Alex Anthopoulos. He's got to make the right managerial hire. He's got to make the right moves. This team has to be a contender. They don't have to win the World Series next year, but to your point, if they miss the postseason again with this core, which is supposed to be in the middle of a run where they're not just getting to the postseason, but they're competing for World Series every year. This is what it should have been. And they missed the postseason 2 years in a row. You don't address the needs in the offseason. You don't make the right managerial hire. This offseason will dictate a lot about what happens with Alex Anthopoulos going forward. A guy that I think's been fantastic. I think he's taken a lot of undue criticism. I think he's been really good. But I do think this offseason is going to be huge for him. Another second question from Trey, who says, I know it's the Angels and would not likely happen. What would your opinion be on a trade for Neto and Trout? What would the trade look like for cost? I'm not even going to begin to try to touch what that would look like with how much money that Trout is owed. I don't know what you're thinking here, Trey, but are you thinking that Trout is somewhat of a money dump at this point and you're just attaching Neto to that? Yeah, I could see that maybe being the case, but man, I don't know. I can't even begin to fathom what that might look like just because of the money involved. And as I said, when we talked about shortstop, and I know you said this too, Trey, but I don't think there's any way they trade Zach Neto, who could be a cornerstone piece for this team. And what looks like, they got a single season here. You got a single 1-year deal for Kurt Suzuki as your manager. You got Perry Bonacian on the last year of his deal. You just brought in Mike Maddox as your pitching coach. It feels like the Angels are going in this season. And I think you do that with Zach Neto. I think you do that with Mike Trout too. So I don't see it happening. Bad News Barb says, it is down the list of needs, but thoughts about Taylor Ward as a trade candidate. If we can bring back Kim, I would love the mix of on base that brings the power of Ward to the lineup. I feel like the Angels have to part with him eventually. I feel like that's been the case for 2 years that everybody's been talking about Taylor Ward getting traded, and he hasn't. Taylor Ward's just one of those guys that he's just kind of up and down throughout the season. Like he's He's an auxiliary piece. He's not one of the main guys, but he is somebody you bat 6th, 7th, 8th in the lineup, and he's going to have his times throughout the season where, he really helps your team. He's going to have some times of the season where he's just a negative in your lineup and he's not getting it done. So I don't hate the idea, but I think there's better options out there. And as I just said with the Angels, I think they're going to try to win this year, whether you think that's a fool's errand or not. Jeremy Vincent says, who is more likely to get traded, Albies, Murphy, or Hurston Waldrop? I don't think if you're talking about this offseason, I don't think Murphy's getting traded just because the value would be so low. I don't think Waldrop's getting traded just because of what he showed last year, and you just need all the pitching depth you can get. So I guess that leaves us the Albies, who I don't think any of these guys are getting traded this offseason. But if you're asking me who's more likely, I think it's Albies, because you could trade Albies, go get a Brandon Lowe, maybe sign a Gleyber Torres. Like, you could upgrade at second base. But to be clear, I don't think Albies is getting traded either. I don't think any of these guys are getting traded. Chris1414, what number in years would be too much to bring back Kim? I would not want to go any more than 3 years on Kim. I'm fine going 3 years. You try to bridge that gap to maybe one of these guys they just drafted, whether it be Lodi, South the Scene, or even maybe who they might draft this next upcoming draft. You got to give yourself a little bit of breathing room to try to bridge that gap. So I'd be fine with a 3-year deal. Anything more than that, because like I said, it's not like Kim's this big bat. It's just trying to get the shortstop position back to league average is what you're trying to do. 4 years would make me very, very uncomfortable. 5 years, I'd say absolutely not. Dustin Mount says, if Lehmann becomes a manager, are you worried about the Braves becoming too analytical? From what I have heard, he is very big into analytics. So apologize for the way I do these mailbag episodes, but this is the title question of this episode. If the Braves do make Danny Lehmann the new manager, is that going to be too radical of a shift from somebody that really doesn't have any ties to the Braves organization other than, he and AA cross paths in Atlanta, but somebody that hasn't been part of the Atlanta Braves organization in the past, hasn't been part of the Braves way? Would that be too radical of a shift? Is that something that needs to happen for this organization? Have they gotten too stale in their former ways? Do they need somebody to come in and shake things up? I don't know. I honestly do not know. Me, just personally, I don't want to shake things up too much, and that's why I'm more on board of a George Lombard or even a David Ross. Somebody that knows the Braves way. They've been part of the organization. I wouldn't necessarily call them Braves guys, but they've been part of the Braves organization, but they've also had enough experience of other organizations to then come in and help, include those ideas. I think that's the perfect combination of what I want personally. Somebody that, yes, they're going to bring in some things they've learned in other places. They're going to bring in a little bit more analytical data, but they're also going to have that Braves background, and they're also going to have a little bit of that old school mentality to them. Part of that is just me. I'm generally more old school, generated, whatever you want to say. I don't give in just to complete analytics, but they do play a huge part in the game, and you have to use them and you have to take advantage of them. But it's having that analytical data, but also relying on what you're seeing during the game as the game plays out, and not just, I don't believe in mapping out a game before a game again, or you can try to as best you can, but knowing when to split from that as the game is unfolding. That's the type of manager that I personally want. But I just don't know. And we won't know until we see it. If a Danny Lehmann hire or somebody just completely outside of the organization is going to be too radical of a shift for the Braves, and whether or not it's going to work out. And as I said earlier, I just worry myself about hiring somebody that doesn't have managerial experience. And Lehmann, again, he's been a bench coach for a while. He's filled in for Dave Roberts when he's been absent. So he has at least some experience in that. And I wouldn't hate, Danny Lehmann as a hire, but it is a little bit more of a wild card to me, and why I probably lean more towards George Lombard or David Ross, somebody that has that managerial experience, somebody that's Lombard who's been through the grind of the minor league system. I lean more towards those guys, but that's just me and what I want. Whether or not it could work, that's, what we'd have to see. But I would lean more towards a Ross or a Lombard myself. Manlio Chesa says, hey, Jake, how many non-AA moves will AA do this offseason, like signing a top-tier free agent or trading for a big thing? My optimistic guess is 1. I put the over-under at 1. I do think at least one big move is made this offseason, whether it probably would be a trade, but either one big free agent move or one big trade. I do think he makes at least one. If he makes two, I'd be ecstatic. But yeah, I put the over under there at 1. Matt Olson Burner, why are fans obsessing over starting pitching when we have more depth than we do offensively? The offense has been the reason we didn't advance in 23 and 24 or make the playoffs in 25. And both World Series teams were offensive first clubs. I think we're probably obsessing over it more right now just because of the injuries that we had last year and not wanting to have that situation again. But I don't disagree with you. The offense has been the big issue, which is why I said, no matter what you do at shortstop, I still think you need to go out and get a big bat. Like that is not, to me, that's becoming more and more less of just it would be nice if they also got a big bat, and more of they have to get a big bat. Matt H says, do you think that Drake winning the MLB NL Outstanding Rookie is a sign that he'll win Rookie of the Year? The only thing that makes me too nervous about him winning Rookie of the Year or not is that those votes had to be cast before the postseason. And it's not like Drake Baldwin or Cade Horton, improved their stock in the postseason, but Cade Horton had a great run at the end of the year, and that was impressionable. And if voters voted with that in mind, there might be more likely to vote for a Cade Horton. Whereas if you give it a little more time to breathe and you just go back and look at the season overall, I think Drake Baldwin is the clear favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. But if you're just, caught up in that moment in that second half that Cade Horton had and helped elevating the Cubs to the postseason, I could see a lot of voters being swayed by that and voting for him. That's the only thing that makes me really nervous. I think Drake Baldwin is the clear Rookie of the Year on the whole of the season, but because votes had to be submitted at the end of the regular season, there's probably were some voters that got caught up in Cade Horton's great second half. Mike Book says, do you think the Breeze will bring back Ron Washington to coach third base? Depends on who the manager is. But I could definitely see him come back in the organization in some way. Ali Getzabosh says, do you think that MH2 can actually improve his approach and plate discipline? His walk rate was never high, but it got lower last year. Are these tendencies too ingrained to change? I hope not. But it's to the point with him where he's got to show me. But I believe he can do it. Anybody can change. I'm a believer that anybody can change. We all, kind of make our own destiny, so to say, or so to speak. But I believe he can change, but does he have he's got to have the willingness. Not everybody, but pretty much everybody in the Braves lineup this year very consciously made a decision to be more patient and to get more walks, except for Michael Harris, who went the opposite way. As you said, the walk rate got lower. And it's like, okay, is this a stubbornness that you're just unwilling to change? Because it's not that you can't. We saw it. Even Ozzie Albies, he changed a little bit this year. He was more patient. We saw it. We saw Braves players change. You can change. I think the big issue, and this is the thing with Jared Kelenic, I'm not trying to compare the two, but with Jared Kelenic, it's been pitch recognition. And I think that might be the issue more than anything. Is he just not recognizing pitches? And that I don't know. With Jared Kelenic, he clearly hasn't figured that out. And there's been many hitters that have failed because they couldn't figure that out. And if that is the problem, that worries me more than anything other than just a more patient approach. But he didn't do either this year. He wasn't more patient, and he still didn't have good pitch recognition. So I'm worried about Michael Harris. He's got to make some big improvements. He's still young. He's 24. Maybe we shouldn't be too harsh on him, but it does worry me that in a season where it really felt like the overall approach for the Braves offense was to be more patient, take more walks, that Michael Harris went the other direction. And I don't know how to take that other than, okay, are you just unwilling to change your stance at all and to change your approach at all? Because nothing is going to happen until he comes to that realization that something needs to change. All right. Thanks for all the questions. So many great questions on today's episode. Hope you all have a great Halloween. Thanks for everybody who joined me here live. Sorry, we got over 100 in here. I wasn't able to get to too much of your questions, but Rockathon in here. Rex Green, haven't seen you in a minute. Thanks for joining as well. Rex says, are any other GMs hamstrung like AA is, or is that a myth? There's a lot of GMs out there that are more hamstrung than Alex Anthopoulos is. I can guarantee you of that. King of Fleas in here. Appreciate you joining. Chris Murphy, thank you so much for being here. Denon Watson, appreciate you all joining me on today's live episode. Doc's Cards, 147 days till opening day. Thank you for that, Doc. That's it's a little bit more depressing than it is exciting because that's so far away. Make sure you all subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. I really do appreciate your support and on the podcast. Hope you all have a great Halloween. Have a great weekend. World Series is ending. Baseball season is ending. Go out, watch the World Series tonight, maybe on Saturday too if we get a Game 7, and then get ready for a lot of news coming your way next week. So make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Braves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. We will talk to you next time.